a member of our group, as is Keith Briggs, and so might defer to them in case there's any further color commentary that they might add that I missed on that meeting. I don't see anybody chiming in.
I think as a summary, Tracy, Glenn came in and presented an update on constituent experience, as well as a very, very, very high level note on digital identity. It was a quick session, but it was a good info session update. That's kind of the main takeaways. And I know that there may be others, including Julie. You mentioned you could give an update. So if there's anything I missed, you're welcome to share.
Yeah, Rocco, I have the notes that Joe was going to share, so I could just give that real quick.
Okay, that'd be good.
So it has mostly been updates by Glenn Poplawski and others on his team. There was an update on statewide procurement efforts, and the IT procurement dashboard is now live along with the North Carolina e-procurement contracts tool. An update on Payit. The Payit contract was renewed for the next 3 years through June 2026. And the RFP for the master service agreement for Payit is nearing completion, and the MyDMV portal moved over to Payit. Tracy already mentioned the digital identity working group update. The goal of that group was to create a common digital identity platform to securely access state government services. It's a cross-agency working group, and they are meeting with other agencies to develop a strategy and roadmap going forward. They also talked about chatbot and accessibility. So there's procurement in progress for a new chatbot tool for nc.gov. And the committee also discussed the annual report that the ITSB needs to produce, and wanted to make sure that they express their support for digital transformation work and for funding for the digital transformation work.
Julie, thank you for that synopsis. So, and to address that last point, as we get into things here a little bit, Sarah will have a little bit of something to say about coordinating efforts so that we can get our report prepared, and certainly going to look for folks from Joe and her, Tracy, your group, to put together your portion of that. I'm going to let Sarah talk to the timeline about that, so that we're going to try to get something done and ready for circulation to the board middle of the month next month, so that Sarah will have a little bit of time to get it sanded and polished before we submit it third week or so of January. So we'll let Sarah get into that part here in a bit. Keith, can you give us a little bit on your end?
You bet. You bet. So we've met one time since the last full board meeting. I had the opportunity to welcome Tori Crass to our committee. So very happy to have Tori. So spent a majority of the time talking just strategy for cybersecurity. He had mentioned that in the process of changing and improving the statewide contracting for cybersecurity services and tools, which I think we all agree is a big move. On the staffing side, DIT is looking to add several staff to support Security Operations Center operations. And they're also looking towards a comprehensive internship program. They're conducting interviews with several of the candidates at the time. Tori may have more of an update there, but that's since October. He also discussed the IIJA and the awards for year one. Moving forward, year two discussions include talking about what questions should be important to ask on applications. DIT wants to find ways to help entities apply in the most effective and sustainable way. So, so that was it on the cybersecurity side. And then what we've done pretty consistently is really promote privacy. And very happy to be working closely together with Cherie over the course of the last few meetings to really promote all of the great efforts she has going on with privacy as well as artificial intelligence, which is exactly what she updated us on in October was the AI policy work. The inventory is ongoing and will be matched with applications inventory. DIT is also recommending an AI risk management framework. And Sheree was asked to join the NCDOT AI impact workforce. There is apparently a developing AI working group, and so further review and refinement is in progress. Use cases are being developed. And I think Sheree was very excited to share that she had 5 new positions that she was beginning the recruiting efforts for. So very exciting times with both cybersecurity and privacy. A couple of other things that we talked about briefly. I have my notes here, my apologies, was just cybersecurity awareness training. We talked about doing this for students and maybe expanding this out to all of our citizens. We're continuing to work with the UNC School of Government, and we'll continue to be producing those videos. Sheree's been a great partner of ours, Kim Smotik and mine. So we'll be looking to produce those over the probably spring, summer, and with the goal of having that done in the fall. And last thing I had was the education pathways discussion. I mentioned to the group that within the UNC system office, we have an identified presidential scholar that's helping us get all of our inventories together, research centers together, and all of the entities as the best we can. So that effort is underway. So Rocco, that concludes my report.
Great, Keith. I appreciate that. Obviously, a lot of interesting things, some things that look like real opportunity and some things that we need to address what the impact, downside, or jeopardies might be. Obviously, the whole AI space is just evolving incredibly quickly right now. And just to be able to try to keep up with that or potentially try to stay in front of some of what's going to develop with that, I think is going to be a real focus for us in the coming year.
Absolutely.
Okay. Appreciate the updates. Sarah, do you want to get into the annual report, sort of your timeline on how you're going to work that out? Is Sarah with us here?
I think she's muted.
Muted?
I'm on mute. Awesome.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I apologize. Rocco has basically touched most of what I was going to talk to you about, but in a little more detail. The report is generally due the beginning of January. We're going to ask for a bit of an extension on that because it's just not feasible given that we need a board chair and some direction before we can fully submit a new report on behalf of the new board chair. So we're going to push it by about 3 weeks, is at least what Rocco and I had talked about. And that means that to the extent possible, the committees, if you guys can send me information that you want to include by the end of the month, no later than the beginning of January, so that I can compile it all. I will send each of you, the committee members or the committee chairs, what we submitted last time so that you have an idea of where we were. Quite frankly, a lot of what you submitted last time may be still very relevant to what you want to submit this time, given digital transformation didn't get the funding we had hoped, and Education Pathways project didn't get underway either with funding. So I will send out that information. The idea being that you guys get it back to me as soon as possible. I know it's the holidays, so if it takes a little longer, that's fine. And if you need me, I'm happy to talk to any of you as well. And then I will compile it and get it back out as a draft to the entire board. Rocco, do you want to meet again to go over it?
So I think that would be useful and advisable. I would say, Sarah, I'd say let's attempt to do that sometime around the 15th. I don't know when the Friday, I haven't checked that, but the week that the 15th, that Friday, maybe to have a meeting, everybody hopefully will have an opportunity to have reviewed it. We can make comments. Don't know that it needs to be a long drawn out, process, but I think it would be useful to get, everyone on the board have an opportunity to address the board and talk about whatever they think might additionally need to be included, or if we've got some fluff that we think we can take out so that the legislators, can get a good read and bullet points and some takeaways.
And if you guys do have other things that you think would be interesting to include, please let me know. I'm happy to work on that as well. And I will, if I know it's going to be tough to get all of us in a room again in January, but I will work to look for times. I'll send out a couple of options and then you guys can give me feedback. And for those of you who can't attend, just provide feedback in any way you can. And then we would hope to get it out the following week after the meeting.
Sounds like a plan. Anybody have any comment related? Okay.
Okay.
That being the case, Jonathan, do you help us or guide us through how we're going to do our voting for chairman and vice chair?
Yes, sir. Thank you. At this point in time, what we'll do is we'll proceed with nominations and then move to allow the folks that have been nominated to give a speech if they would like, and then we'll move into voting. So as it stands right now, we have 2 nominations for the chair of the board, and that is Rocco DeSanta and Jeff Tart. So what we will do at this time, if there are any other nominations for the chair of the board, please make those now. And I will give everyone a moment. So hearing none, may I have a motion from the board that we conclude the nomination period and proceed with voting?
So moved.
I'm sorry, can I just ask?
Yes,
you to
Tracy.
confirm, Jonathan, both have agreed to serve if elected?
Oh,
Small
Yes, ma'am.
detail, but
Yes.
before we close.
small detail, and I
Yeah.
should absolutely. That's as I understand it. But speak now or forever hold your peace. Do I? Okay, thank you. So do I have a second that we proceed with speeches and voting?
Second.
I second that.
Okay, so all those in favor,
Aye.
say aye. Anyone opposed? So the motion carries. So at this time, in alphabetical order, if the nominees would like to make a speech, they are free to do so. So we will begin with Dr. Rocco DeSanta.
So Jonathan, I appreciate that. Quite honestly, don't have a prepared speech. I would say that going forward in the coming year, if I'm chair, certainly going to continue the work that we have on digital transformation, cybersecurity. But I think we're also I would like to see us add a couple more components. I don't know if that means that they are subcommittees of the committee or if we have additional committees. But in that vein, and as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think that that AI is going to have to be a very big focus for us going forward. As I follow what I can in the news these days, it is incredible to me to see how quickly everything is progressing. Don't know if you folks saw the Deep South supercomputer they're building in Australia, but 220 trillion synaptic operations a second, literally to mimic the human brain. This is, I think we're just on the precipice of just some incredible developments over the coming years. And I'm going to be very interesting to see how the state is going to cope with what there is, both good and bad, that may come from this. So anyway, a larger focus on AI, legislative engagement. I think part of the reason that we did not see the funding that we would like to have seen this year is that we as a board just did not engage with the legislatures in a way that was productive. And so whether we have that as a committee and a group or whatnot, but I think we need to get some more legislative engagement just from the board so they know a little bit more about what we're doing throughout the year as opposed to just getting, the paper at the end of the year. Also would like to have a little bit of more information just about, budget, finance, just how DIT works, from the mechanics of things, not looking to get down into a tactical sort of discussion about projects, but more or less, though, that each member of the board understands kind of what the state spend is and where we're going with things. And I know for one that I've gotten snippets, obviously early on last year, we talked about some of that, but a way or a mechanism for us to just be a little bit more involved or have a better understanding of that. Jeff and I, quite honestly, have talked about the fact that, very difficult, don't know that the state auditor really knows what the IT spend for the state is. And I think that would be something that would be of interest and that's something that we should be looking at. And then the last piece of that is just education and recruitment. We've lost some really good people in the last year or two. And, obviously this has been a focus within the Cybersecurity Privacy Committee about education, but it's really been brought home to me that this is going to be pretty fundamental for the state to be able to do things it needs to do going forward to attract talent and be able to retain it. And so I think this is something worthy of a little bit more of our time and focus. So anyway, with that, I appreciate the opportunity to address everyone.
Thank you. So at this time, Jeff, if you'd like to say anything, we will allow you to do so. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, as most of you know, when you run a sophisticated campaign, one of the early tasks you do is run polling data to understand what the issues that are important to your constituents. Unfortunately, my polling data is running a little behind and hasn't come in yet. But in seriousness, I mean, regardless of whether Rocco or whoever's leading me or whatever, we'll work closely together. We have been, and we talk regularly. When the committee was put together, I was in the Senate, and there was a handful of us that were interested in seeing this body come together to give it some direction. The kind of as a little backstory, the intent was, some of you may be familiar with the Transportation Board that works with NCDOT. And the intent was this board would eventually, over time, evolve and become that sophisticated, that significant, and have that much, in a sense, sway and direction. And the legislature was looking for that. It had multiple roles that we're actually not fulfilling now, and we're not doing it on a timely basis. We had people, and we've talked about it, people that wanted to step off because it didn't feel we were moving forward. Last year or so, we finally got some traction and started working on some very significant things with digital transformation and with cybersecurity. But we've got one critical role we don't really do, and it needs to be brought to bear, and that's an oversight function, which was really the main function, and then to provide added resource and strategic direction for the CIO. We're not to be in conflict with that office, but to be a resource, an outside resource to that office. We're also to be an advocate back to the legislature for appropriation for things, and also in our tech community. There's relationships this body needs to have with people like NC Tech and with the university and environments that we need to do. I've been playing with it with organizational structures and things we need to add. I'm a backup napkin, notebook paper. You may not want to see this and hear this at some point, but there's things I think we can do and be excruciatingly effective. We just have too much talent here, but there's other talent we need to pull into this body, which is another function that maybe everyone does not recognize. We have great latitude to pull people into committee work groups and expertise from around the state, and we need to tap that because with the research triangle with the universities, there's ways we can literally be the most wired and most sophisticated state in the country. And I believe that with my heart and soul, but I come from an IT background. Again, it doesn't really matter which one of us, but I'd love to see some of this come to light, come to fruition, and see us all engaged. This committee is important to work together and be a single body. So whoever's leading it, I'm all on board. I'm not going to go away, but I think there's some things we can really elevate the capabilities and the status of this body and help the CIO and help the legislature. So with that, I really, as a politician, hate letting go of the floor in the audience, but I guess I will yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, Senator. So at this time, what we'll do, Julie is going to assist me with voting. And I think the easiest way to do this is via roll call. Oh, yes, Tracy.
Sorry about that. And I don't want to turn this into a debate. And I'm really pleased neither of you went, given the polling didn't come through, Jeff, that we didn't go into the let's smear the other candidate aspect of what we saw.
Well, my negative ads weren't ready yet.
Yeah. Have the polling data, so didn't know where to go there. Hey, can I just ask you both? I think this point about engaging the legislature and having our group, our efforts, DIT's efforts, and the importance of IT being a little bit more on the forefront toward having been able to get some money, perhaps if we'd done it differently with the legislature for digital transformation. Can I just ask, strategy wise, right? How you do that, and just so I'm a little better informed on it.
So Jeff, you want to go forward? You want to speak to that, or go ahead. And
yeah, obviously I can speak to that one. The thing of it is, let's step back. There's something called town hall days. All the town municipalities, counties, everybody shows up, and that's the day you bring your laundry list. That's nice, and you get to meet all your representatives and senators and everything. But that's not how stuff gets done. A lot of it's behind the scenes, and it's building relationships, and it needs to be constant. And there's multiple fronts. And you've got to realize you have to work each of those. From the legislature, there's an IT committee and an oversight committee. The oversights are joint between. You really need to establish relationships with the chairs, people like Jason Sain and stuff. Jason is an interesting one because he wears multiple hats, not only as chair of the IT committee for the House, but he's also the senior appropriation chair. So there's a sequence of people working the legislature. And this is probably something we need to take offline because it's a bit of a conversation and a classroom to figure out, okay, how to truly leverage this. But there's the IT committees, and then there's appropriations within IT. So you're taking policy versus appropriations. Then you've got to get to the appropriation chairs. They have the ability to bed anything in the budget, including policy, ironically. But those chairs of both the Senate and in the House are critical. So Jason in the House, Brent Jackson is the senior chair. You work with the rules chairs in the House and the Senate majority leaders. They're equally significant in being able to influence. What a lot of people don't realize, though, the more senior members in the majority party, whoever's in majority, has discretionary spending. And it can be from a junior member, a freshman, that might have a few $100,000 at his discretion to somebody like the speaker or the president pro tem that may have literally 50 to 100 million of discretionary spending. They on their own signature can allocate funds. So it's getting people, it's a little bit like the classic, we need to whip votes in caucus. You have to have an avenue to work into the caucus because you don't have a seat in there. So our issues are brought forward because that's where the decisions actually get made, not in the committees, and a little bit less in appropriations. But those relationships is, one of the things, and Keith was part of this on the IT side. When I was in the Senate, we need to find advocates. And we took the top 6 agency CIOs and the state CIO, and I met with them every other week for breakfast to figure out, okay, what's important? What are we doing? This can't be a one-time thing. We don't have an exact figure. It's been 4 years. Was the last time I secured or tried to secure every strategic systems plan from every state agency. It took getting 7 other senators and Beth Wood to sign a letter requiring them to share it with us. So they weren't working in a closet. There's things that I'm guessing the total spend across the state that's IT related is about 2.6 billion. It is a big nut. There's things we need to do, as simple as we need to go advocate working with the controller and with the state auditor to push for a single fund codes. There are common fund codes across the chart of accounts in the general ledger, so we can combine and roll up and actually monitor what the spend is. We need to do things like overlaying and mapping IT spend. I know for a fact there's 3 versions of SAP we're paying for. 2 of them we don't have to. Why? And we don't take the time because it's not our money, right? It's somebody else's. No, that is our money. And those are the kinds of things we can bring to bear and have a direct impact on. So there's a lot of, it's not just we need to ask for more, a new version of SAP. There's a lot of things, but we need to get organized in structure, and we need to keep the ask typically with members, not picking on them, but it needs to be simple, straightforward, bullet point, single page type things, because they're getting so much stuff thrown at them. And then you got to stay in a polite kind of voice in their ear on a regular basis. And that comes from establishing a relationship with members. So, and that's where we leverage, our legislative liaison in the department. But we have also got to do that across other departments, because DIT is not the biggest stick in the pile, right? Because with DHHS, with DOR, with DPI, we need to be working as a consolidated group and a voice on common needs for IT spend, because it'll have a much greater weight when it crosses multiple agencies, especially the big 5. So that's a little background.
So, and quite honestly, I think Jeff and I are very much on the same page. And as Jeff said earlier, I think we're well aligned on this. I think we'll continue to be. I think we have people on the board who do have the ear of legislators. I mean, obviously, several of us were appointed by the legislature, and I know that those relationships, personal relationships, can go a long way if we can organize ourselves in a way that we can sort of divide up what needs to be done, and then each of us be able to reach out to the folks that they think they may have some relationship with to help get the information across to them. And just to Jeff's point, honestly, I've got to believe that there's a way to carve out 5 or 7% of whatever the IT spend is in savings, just because if we can identify where the duplication of efforts are and can address that and save 5%, I mean, it's $100 million, not chump change. So I think that obviously the legislative engagement at the committee level and at the individual level for each of the members that has the facility to do that will help move the ball forward in a way that we haven't done to this point.
And let me leave you guys with one thought around this. This is something that it'll take some time and effort to do. It'll take a collaborative effort of several committee members, and it won't make a hill of beans of difference whether it's me doing it or Rocco, because we will do this together. So if Rocco's leading it, I'm totally comfortable. It's just a matter, do we want it to be a focus of the body, of the committee? That's what needs to be determined. Yeah. We can't go off on our own as lone wolves pursuing stuff that's not got, the entire support of the strategy board. Needs to be a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. Tracy, did we cover your question? Okay, thanks. So Jonathan, opened it up to us, but I don't know if anyone else has a comment that they want to make, or if that's appropriate. We're certainly, open to hearing from the rest of the board before we vote.
I would, yes, I've got a question, comment. I'm convinced that we have the best two candidates for this job without question. And either can and will do the job. I want to ask a question of Jeff. A couple of things. Congratulations. I know you've been selected to lead the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce forward this coming year. That's wonderful. And I know that you've announced to run for state auditor. And I am totally behind you. And I will tell you right now, call me later. Anything I can do to help you in Stanley and Montgomery counties, just call me. But with all that being said, and you're still consulting, I have to ask the question. Sounds like you got your plate full. Do you have the time this year to put the effort in? I know I've helped with at least a dozen state races, and it's all consuming. So I guess I got to ask, do you have the time to do this job in addition to all that you have going?
Sure. Well, a couple things. First of all, it's the 90-10 rule, which we all know. Let's go think about church or synagogue or mosque, wherever you are. It's the 10% that do the 90% of the work in a sense, and the busy people stay busy. I'm basically like a lot of us, basically semi-retired. So it's like, I think the reason with the auditor, just to give you guys a little bit of the backstory, I got chased to do this about 6 to 8 months ago, and I said no, primarily because I wouldn't run against Beth. When they called me the first time, I immediately called Beth, said, hey, what do you think about me running against you? And we were just laughing about it. And just his background, so everybody knows, and most of you know, I'm a Republican. Beth, and you can talk to her, she's endorsing me to do this. She is one of the people that called me and asked me to run, because we need somebody that's got the experience to actually run the office. I am not looking for a job, not looking to do that, right? But the chamber stuff is a once a month activity as far as meetings and things. Same thing, we're meeting. I will tell you now, if I'm chairing this, we're meeting more frequently than quarterly. We can't get done what we need to get done doing that. But we need to be respectful because we're all volunteers. We're not getting paid to do this job. The running for the auditors next year, chairing would be, it would be interesting because if I happen to win by happenstance, I would no longer be a voting member of the board, but I'd still be on it, which would be interesting. So there's some bias in wanting to at least lead it and get us on the right direction for a year. This is going to sound weird. I'm going to give you inside baseball. I won't knock on one door, put out one flyer, or hang one sign for state auditor. It's a state race. None of us run out looking, oh, I got to vote for state auditor, right? It's all about a little bit of name ID and recognition. And that's all going to happen digitally and electronically. That's how we're, and media. Only way you're going to do that. So the only thing I'm doing is calling friends and family for campaign donations so we can get the message out. Doesn't really require, it's not like a traditional campaign where you need to show up at every event and every door. So it's actually a lot less time. So anyway, if I didn't think I could give my whole heart to this and wasn't committed to this, I wouldn't throw my name in the hat. But this is important, which is also why we created the committee to begin with. And I don't want it to go away. And it won't with Rocco, but I was worried for a while that we were going to be dust in the wind in the first year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions for either of the nominees? Okay, so hearing none, we can proceed. And folks, something that maybe the board I would like to make aware, there is a bylaw in the there's a section in our bylaws that indicates that designees of ex officio members cannot vote. So that means if you are here on behalf of one of the folks that hold hold a position on the board as a matter of your position within government, you are not able to vote. So that means governor appointees, speaker of the house appointees, and the president pro tem appointees would be the only ones voting today.
So Jonathan,
yep.
I have a question and an issue with this, frankly.
Yes, sir.
It's not specifically about this vote. But did anybody reach out to Peter Hans and say that Keith is not allowed to vote for the chair of this board and invite him to attend?
I cannot speak for anyone other than myself, and I know that I did not.
So UNC
Yeah.
will not be represented in a vote for the chair, is what I'm hearing.
Jonathan, we had talked right before the meeting started, and it seems to me that a precedent had already been set because the proxies of these individuals have been allowed to vote in the past. So I'm just kind of like Keith. It worries me that that these individuals aren't being allowed to express their opinion for chair. And it's like I said, we got two good ones, but nonetheless, the UNC system and the community college system deserve a voice.
One thing I can say, folks, that I think that we could maybe have a workaround here if interested, and we would have to put this to a vote. We could entertain a motion from the board to suspend the bylaws for purposes of voting for this position, suspend this portion of the bylaws, and we can always address our bylaws, in the coming year and amend this moving forward if we needed to. But that would require, I think, a vote of the board. And unfortunately, I believe that would require a vote of the board as we have it currently in the bylaws. So unfortunately, we're stuck with what we have, I believe, at the moment. But if that is something that we would like to entertain, we certainly can take a motion from anyone on the board to do that. And
Jonathan, sorry.
Or just questions?
This was not about the vote for chair. I
understand.
I have a fundamental issue that UNC is not being represented. And if I can't vote on behalf of UNC, then Peter Hahn should have had that opportunity. That's all I'm saying.
Understand.
Jonathan, a couple procedural questions, if I could. So this is just the bylaws that were written separate from what's in statute. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so is there a clause in there? Because I serve on the Economic Investment Committee, and as long as there's a letter written of who your designee is, that counts as a full vote on the EIC. So I don't know if the bylaws allow for that right now, or if we would even need to add that. I understand the sort of ad hoc, whoever's here and says they're representing the agency is a little questionable, but I would think an official letter from the designee that this is my designee for all and has all the rights therein should do it. But I don't know if the bylaws allow that. So
they don't distinguish at this point between whether there's a letter designating or anything along those lines. We are an advisory board, and the statutes do not require us necessarily to, we have to establish bylaws, but I think we would have the flexibility for these purposes of doing what we thought was necessary. We have not, as y'all are aware, the bylaws were passed some years ago, and probably that's something that we should address as with the board in the following year anyway. But to your answer, go ahead.
Just, not to get caught up in the weeds on this, Jonathan, tell me if this is not permissible, why can't we make a motion now to include these folks in the vote? Proceed with that, whatever the outcome of that is. If it's positive, then they get the vote. We can go back and figure out whatever we need to do to clean up the paperwork, here and thereafter.
I think that is fine. I believe what we would have to do is have a vote of the current voting members to be able to move forward in that manner. That seems to make the most logical sense.
Sure.
And if that carries, then we can go on to that.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we allow the designees to be able to participate in the voting process.
I'll second that.
90 second.
Okay, all of those in favor, can you please say aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, that seems to carry. Do we have any opposed? Okay, great. So then thank y'all. And I'm sorry for that technicality, and was one of the issues that I knew we were going to have to bring up. So I apologize for not doing that before now. That being said, the motion carries, and all for purposes of this vote today, all members, including ex officio members and their designees, will be able to vote. So at that time, if we can have Julie proceed, what we will do is go down the list of members that are currently present and ask for a vote. And the statutes do require that the vote be public and not by written ballot or confidential. So that is in the statutes. So if we can, Julie, if you'll please proceed, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I want to just also then make sure there isn't anyone else on the meeting that is representing an ex officio member that isn't on the screen right now. It doesn't have their camera on, so I don't see any names, but if anyone thinks they are. All right. So Keith Briggs.
I cast my vote for Senator Tart.
All right. And Rocco DeSanto.
I cast my vote for myself.
Tracy Futhi.
I will vote for Dr. DeSanto.
And Gerald Poplin.
I like both, but till next year, maybe I'm going to go with Rocco.
Jeff Tart.
That's a good question. Can I hold, or do we need to stay in order?
I suppose we can circle back to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Kristen Walker.
I cast my vote for Dr. DeSanto.
All right. Jeff Tart.
All right, then I'm going to make a motion in the middle, and I know we will vote, but if the vote, I will vote for Rocco, and then I will ask that we do it by acclamation at the end.
So I have completed the roll call.
So I think it's as apparent that Dr. DeSanto will carry as chair. And Jeff, I believe you had a motion for the board.
I do, that we.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
Keith Warner.
Well,
Oh, gosh,
I-
of all that.
I think it's sliding in one direction anyway, so I think we're good. Rocco, congratulations.
I'm so sorry, Keith.
You're good.
Condolences. Yes, thank you.
Jeff, I believe you had a motion for the board.
Yeah, I think for public record that we then note that this is by acclamation that Dr. DeSanto will be the chair next year.
So noted. At this time, we will proceed with the nominations for the co-chair. We've been operating under the, if the board is okay moving forward with any nomination that we received for chair that did not carry. So in this situation, we have one. Jeff, would you be interested in serving as the co-chair of the board? And also if we would have other nominations for that position?
I will be happy to if Rocco will have me.
Absolutely, Jeff. I was hopeful that you would be willing to do that.
Do we have any other nominations for members of the board for co-chair?
That sounds like a dream team to me, so I'm all on board.
So hearing none, I will take a motion from the board to conclude nominations for co-chair.
Enthusiastically moved.
All right, enthusiastically moved by Ms. Futhi. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any of those opposed? So the motion carries. And so I believe we can move forward unless the board would like to vote, we can proceed. Do we have a motion to say that the board, would y'all like to vote individually for Mr. Tart for co-chair, or do we have a motion to suspend the voting and move forward with that nomination? All right.
Second.
Do we have a second? Wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Thank you. So that motion carries, and thank you, Mr. Tart, for agreeing to serve as our co-chair of the board. I believe, folks, that concludes the voting portion of our meeting today, and thank you all for helping me out.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. So next order of business is just to open the floor. Other comments? Anybody on the board have anything else that we would like to address before we proceed to adjournment? So, Jonathan, I do have one question. I'm assuming that it is an annual, given this is an annual basis, that the vote we just made actually begins for the term Jan 1st, or does it begin as of today?
You know, interestingly enough, I don't believe that our bylaws are specific enough about that particular issue. I was in the process of sort of looking that, and I need to confirm, and I apologize, I don't have an answer for you at this very second. I know that the term is for a year. So my assumption, if I can go verify this, is that it would be effective immediately.
Okay. But does that mean we need to have another vote this same time next year?
It would, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Does
But
this
I
make-
can send out.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Jonathan, I was just going to suggest, I mean, it would seem like the logical aspect, thinking of through the bylaws and stuff, that it would be a vote for when you take off, just like any other office. So it would be a January through December thing. And that way, this isn't appointed because of the change by the legislature, which gives us, I think, a basis to allow this to run through December as an appointment because of the change in statute, and that this vote
Mhm.
takes effect in January. So it's a clear 1 year. So we don't get an off month kind of craziness. So that I would actually make a motion that we interpret it that way and execute it that
And
way.
and I would second it. And that was the whole point of bringing it up. Yeah.
Well, I think we have a motion for the floor, and that would be fine. Let me just, if you don't mind, folks, let me just consult the statute. I have it here open in front of me.
And while you're reading that,
So-
John,
Yes, sir.
one comment to make, which I verified. It's interesting because the appointments, several of us will have appointments that have expired, but the committee, the legislature doesn't reconvene until March or April. So the way the statute's written is we stay effective in place until the next reappointment. So our terms will actually be longer than specified in statute because of that anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I was just noticing here again that the terms are begin or expire on January 1st, 2021. But yet, with that, I also know that understanding that until someone replaces you, you carry over. So it makes sense to me if you look at the statutes and what we have for the strategy board, that any term would go from January 2nd until other time that folks could be nominated. So that makes sense to me. And I don't believe that we actually need to vote. I think that would just be the term.
Okay. Good. Sounds good. Julie, appreciate you putting that up. So, and I guess, Sarah, we'll circulate something related to a meeting mid-January. That would be our next get together, purpose of which would be to review whatever we've come up for the annual report.
Yes.
Okay, and at that time, I think we'll actually, Jeff and I'll, in the interim, we'll get together, establish a schedule. I would hope that we could meet a little more frequently than we have, than the quarterly meeting, as we get some of these ideas kicked off. Not looking to make it burdensome for everybody, but I would like to get together often enough to be able to start to move the ball forward. Just a comment. If anybody has any other, happy to hear that. Otherwise, we're going to proceed to adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, I think we're there. Folks, have a good Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Yeah, Jeff, seriously, if I can help you, please.
I
you
will
got my
holler,
number.
believe me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Rocco, congratulations to us.
Or condolences, as the case may be.
One or the
right?
other.
Right.
Indeed. All right, look forward to working together.
Thanks. Me as well. Bye-bye now.